Redefining student success with equity and community at the core. This is a Clover Park School District presentation for the Washington State School Directors Association's annual conference in November 2020.
Hello everyone, my name is Marty Schaefer and I am the board president of the Clover Park School District, and I have been for several years. I've been on the board for 15 years. In my own life, I'm an advocate for public education, and I'm very committed to building community, so I'm so grateful to get to do that through the school board.
Everybody, my name is Ron Banner, and I am the proud superintendent of the Clover Park School District. I just want to say that as we go into this presentation, a little bit about me is that I'm an advocate for equity and inclusion. I've grown over time, and my growth and my journey has brought me to this place, and I haven't arrived, and I think that's important to acknowledge that we never arrive. But as I work through my position as superintendent, I really want my being to come through. And in the end, I want to make sure that this district and the students that come through this district have it so much better than I had growing up, and that my sons who graduated through this district had it coming through, and my daughter who's going to graduate through this district have it. The whole point is to leave behind what's better than where you found it.
Hey everyone, Grant Twyman here, and I'm the Equity and Inclusion Program Manager here at Clover Park School District, and I'm excited for this presentation, for this opportunity to just kind of share and have a conversation. I feel like I'm naturally a networker, and so one of the things that I get to do around Clover Park School District and Lakewood is bring together a network of community supports to invest in the lives of students while equipping students to navigate the network that exists to support them. So I'm excited to be here and just partner with everyone that's part of this to have a conversation and go on a journey where we're all growing, learning, and for me, one of my favorite parts about a journey and a conversation is being challenged to go harder and do something new, different, and unique. So,
Our district is on an equity journey, and we are excited to share about some of our efforts, collaboration, and connectedness for the directors and district administrators at the WSSDA 2020 annual conference.
And so our district has been on an equity journey, and we have learned and are learning that there are central truths to trekking this journey well. And the first one that comes up for us is the idea of having a growth mindset. And so we have to intentionally embrace this idea that we are aiming to move forward. Issues around equity and inclusion shouldn't be the end of a conversation or a means to stop a conversation, but should spark new conversations where we critically reflect, create unique solutions, and remove barriers that have pushed marginalized students further from educational justice, right? And so we're on that journey to move forward. And so those will be one of the things that we'll cover today.
With regard to strategically aligning, we have to ensure that our efforts are to pursue equity and that they're strategic and strategically aligned. Instead of tokenizing equity, the work has to be real, and it has to make a real impact on our entire organization. It's not something that we can compartmentalize into one piece of the school district, into one school, or into just schools. It truthfully has to be a comprehensive approach, from transportation to food nutrition, to schools, to the board, to the classroom. We want it to go up and down and across our entire school district. To do that, we definitely have to make sure that we are intentional about how we do that.
Ron, I appreciate so much what you said, and I know that you have built alignment. You're talking about strategically aligned. You've built alignment with your board, and so I just want to make sure people understand that, because without that board alignment, I'm not sure that we really know how to come alongside and be a vital part of that work. So what you're doing is very strategic into the lives of our students. The board's responsibility is more than just supporting you to do the work of equity.
Sure.
We model it, but we move it in the community just as you move it in the school district. And so I think that that's an important thing for us to understand. And in doing that, I want to also acknowledge that there's 3 people on this in this presentation. Predominantly, we'll have another board member at the end share some information too. But the relationship I have with these 2 gentlemen is very genuine and it's very real. And therefore, we're able to experience the value of equity even in community in what we're doing. And so it's like natural to help it be aligned. It's natural to model it. And so I'm just saying to you, Ron Banner and Grant Twyman, I'm thankful that you 2 guys are in my life and that I have a relationship with you. So thank you. Everything really in this presentation is not surface level, it's genuine. No, I'm with you. Thank you. And I'm not sure, I think it was you that said this, Ron, which personally it's hard for me to see you sprinting because you're pretty good at that. I see you lifting and blocking, but anyway, you said that the work of equity was a marathon of sprints.
Yeah.
And that picture really means something to me. It's not, okay, we ran the races over. It's sprint, rest, sprint, rest, sprint, rest.
And I think it hits at that incremental process where yes, there's this long, journey, this marathon that we're on, but it doesn't mean we just kind of slow walk this thing, right? And so there are periods and pockets where yes, we need change right now, right? And then there are other periods and pockets where we recognize the long-term sustainable change over time.
Our presentation is best described as an organic conversation organized around those 5 truths to embrace during the equity journey. Enjoy.
So the first thing that we want to have a conversation about, kind of the first topic in our presentation, is this idea of a growth mindset. And we said it before, that for us as a district, we recognize that we're on an equity journey. And for that, the journey has many implications, right? Just the analogy and the metaphor, but one of the things that I'll highlight is this reality that we are all growing, and that we never arrive. It's one of the reasons conversations around cultural competence versus cultural humility came up, right? Because cultural competence kind of says, well, you're there, you're competent, right? When the reality is it's more of maybe a cultural humility, right? Where we're learning, we're growing, we're seeking to become more sensitive, right? And grow in our understanding, right? And our empathy. So the journey analogy is intentional and it's important because we're constantly moving forward. And so for me, when I think about journey, I'll share just briefly about, my own story. I'm originally from the East Coast. I kind of always preface that because I then say I'm so East Coast. Like the way that I think, the way that I speak, sometimes I'm cleaning it up, but at the core of me, I'm East Coast. I was born right outside of West Philadelphia. Single mom, 2 brothers. We grew up, and it was. I tell the story sometimes that we grew up really poor, but the reality is I haven't always been able to share that because I didn't know we were poor. It wasn't until I got married and my wife told me that we grew up poor, and I was like, I argued with her about it, and then my mom said, "No, yeah, we were poor." Said, well, why did you tell us? Like, you never told us we were poor. But so quick story, right? As I'm thinking about my personal journey and then the journey that Clover Park School District is on, and then how our journeys intersected. I met various members of the team at Clover Park a few years ago, and in this particular meeting, I believe it was a professional development session on some stakeholders that the board had brought together to really see Lakewood, which was an incredible initiative that the district and the board launched, which is we really need to see the students and the people in our district and in our community. If we're going to do this well, if we're going to do this right, we need to see our students, we need to see Lakewood. And so I met the board and district leadership right as they're beginning that journey, along with some community stakeholders. And one of the things they had said to me was, we want to create a community where we really are community, where students can flourish and students feel like the entire community is supporting them and championing them, and we're going to do this together. And I'm thinking, well, I kind of know, some dynamics in Lakewood, and the diversity that exists is going to make creating community a little bit challenging. So I don't know if they're seeing or if they know what they're getting themselves into. And so I shared this story in fifth grade. I remember we were living in this neighborhood called Simon Gardens, and there was a community pool. And if you know the East Coast, we get the extremes of all four seasons. So it's summer, it's hot, it's humid, it's over 95 almost every day. And so the community pool was the place to be. So I remember my mom, we would walk to the community pool. It felt like every day, right? When I think back to the story, I don't know if that's the case, but an interesting detail is our neighborhood is, say, here, and then there's another neighborhood called Holloway Terrace right here, and then there's the community pool. And Holloway Terrace was known to be filled with KKK and just it was a white community that we just knew it was racist, and it was just an unsaid thing, oftentimes a said thing. We knew it. So when we would go to the community pool, my mom would always walk us around Holloway Terrace to get to the pool. Well, one particular day, my mom's like, "Hey, you can go. You can take your brothers to the pool, right? We've been enough times. You know how to get there. Go ahead." And I'm a smart guy. Like, I'm super smart. So if we're going to the pool and I'm in charge, like I'm leading this, we're not going the long way. It's over 95 and it's humid. So we're gonna go the fastest route. So what's the fastest route to the pool from our neighborhood? Straight through Holloway Terrace. And I didn't do a cost benefit analysis in terms of how we would be received, right? Or what that experience would be like. It was, we need to get to the pool. We're going fast, right? So I remember we're walking, and specifically put us walking on the sidewalk, going against traffic, not in the lane of traffic, but going against it. And we're walking on the sidewalk, and there's a truck driving down the road, and I saw the truck. I knew the truck. I'm not analyzing what's to come, but I remember there were guys in the back. This truck veers off the road onto the sidewalk to hit us. My brothers and I, we jump out of the way, right, into just like the patch of grass off the sidewalk, and the guys yell from the back of the truck, like, "Get out of here, you niggers, or we're gonna kill you." Well, my younger brother, he jumps up, throws his middle finger, right, and is like, "F you," right? And he's still the hothead type to this day, right? But I grab him and I kind of shake him, like, "What are you doing? There's we don't want problems with those guys. Like, it's like 4 or 5 guys in the back of a truck, like, and they're adults. No, thank you." So I shake him, like, "Come on, man, like, don't be dumb. Let's keep going." So we continue on to the pool. We get to the pool. My brothers, they jump right in, right? And I remember just kind of sitting there. I'm kind of like still wrestling through what just happened. They're younger, so it didn't really impact them as much. But then it gets interesting. The guys show up. The truck pulls up to the pool, and the guys get out the back of the truck. And again, my brothers, they're in the pool just having a good time, and I'm looking like trying to size up the situation, like what's about to happen. Within, it felt like seconds, 2 police officers show up, and so I get this sense of relief, like, okay, we're gonna be fine. They're not gonna kill us. Well, I see the guys in the truck talking to the police officers, and they start pointing and looking at us, and then police officers come over and come up to me, and they're like, "Hey, you got to leave the pool. You and your brothers, y'all have to leave." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, these guys said you're threatening them and saying you're going to kill them. So you all have to leave the pool right now." So I grabbed my two brothers. My younger brother, he starts crying. My middle brother, he wants to argue, right, a little bit. And so I'm like, hey, like, let's just leave. Police officer, like, hey, don't come back here anymore. Causing trouble. It was embarrassing. I remember feeling embarrassed. I remember feeling afraid. And, I walked my brothers home. And, we went the long way for sure this time, right? We walked around the neighborhood. And man, I remember processing that. I never told my mom to this day, right? I've told this story, a couple of times around the district now, but I still have never told my mom the story. But I remember processing on the way home, thinking about where I fit in the world, right? And who's for me. And who I thought was for me may not be. And now I'm thinking and making conclusions about whose side, police officers, whose side they're on. And I'm in fifth grade. I don't even know how old I was, but I remember in fifth grade, I'm coming to these real conclusions about life in the world, and based on some very real experiences. And so what's interesting is I share that story at this meeting with some school board members, community stakeholders, and district leadership. And I'm much older now, and I've been able to process different things. But if we're going to create community, and we're going to talk about equity and inclusion, being able to realize or create space for very real stories and experiences, and how we are judging the world and how it's informed our narrative of the world, will be critical and crucial to really creating a community that's pursuing equity. And so here we are with Clover Park School District, and we're able to work with students. And instead of just teaching students how to navigate, certain systems or neighborhoods, right? How are we helping students walk straight to the pool, right?
Very good.
So it's an incredible, thinking about journey and story, right? Here are two stories and many stories journeys kind of intersecting on these issues.
Grant, thank you so much for being real and vulnerable and sharing that story. It is very impacting, just to hear it on so many different levels. And, just want to tell you thank you, man.
So I've had the privilege of hearing that story 2 times before. So this is my 3rd time hearing that story. And I want to say that every time I hear it, I have a physiological response to it, right? I get anxious, and I have like physical responses to that. And hopefully I'm not giving my tells on camera right now, but I do feel physically tighten up when I hear it. And it's because I can relate to it, because I've had similar stories or interactions in concept. And then I wonder about our students having, like, I can guarantee that our students have had these types of stories conceptually happen to them. They have these experiences. And so I knew at that point that as a superintendent, I needed to support a position in our district around equity and inclusion, so that this concept of equity and inclusion didn't become just another point on the radar, right? Another blip on the radar that didn't, get this just deserve attention and resource. So I want to say thank you as well, Grant, one, for your vulnerability and willingness to share, because a lot of times those of us who have had those experiences, kind of like a negative childhood experience where people suppress them and they block that memory out, we don't want to relive those. And so your vulnerability to relive it and to allow others to relive their encounters, is why we have moved in this direction. So thank you on multiple levels for sharing.
And so here we are today. What we're really doing is we're trying to cause it to where you can walk straight to your community pool.
Yeah.
But not only walk straight to your community pool, but to feel great while you're walking there, knowing that you're going to be in community, that when you get there,
Yeah.
not that when you get there, you have to watch your back and then make a decision how you're going to walk home.
Yeah.
Our community pool should be a great place to get to be and hang out, right?
And so when you think about strategy or implementing initiatives around equity, right, or this commitment to pursue equity, one of the things that's essential is voice. One of the things that's essential in that process, in that journey, is elevating and empowering diverse voices. And so for us, when we ask the question, who are constituents, right, or who are key stakeholders, undoubtedly it's our students. And so we launched this campaign to elevate and empower student voice, and in various ways throughout different times in the course of a school year, we hosted over a dozen listening sessions where we allowed students to set the tone, to decide the topics, and the level of depth and transparency and honesty, to really get a feel for what's going on in their world, right? What are they thinking? How are they feeling? What are their suggestions for what should be different in our district? And through that, we not only elevated student voice, which is to say, here's a direct line to the superintendent, but we empower student voice by allowing, not even allowing, but providing an opportunity for students to weigh in on what should be changed and how things should be different in a district, whether it's the classroom or even how we organize and operate as a district office. So it's been incredible to see a journey continue and journeys intersect, and now we're equipping and elevating student voice.
In order for our district to make sure that kids can walk straight to the pool, and I love that. Like, I want to put quotes around that and copyright that. That might be another podcast. But in order to make sure that our kids can walk straight to the pool, we knew that we would have to build a structure within our district, and we would have to be strategic about that. The work cannot just simply be supported by the superintendent. In order for it to be effective, in order for it to take root and be applied, I had to take the position that it must be elevated and empowered. And as the superintendent, it was critical for me to take that position and communicate that position, again, comprehensively. As a new superintendent, what my task was to provide my vision, and then to center our work around that vision. And to do anything like that, to move anything forward, you need the support of your governing body, again, centered around that vision. So this wasn't a hard task, and it's still a journey and an ongoing task. And that's one of the things I'm proud about our board, is that we're willing to go on the journey. We're willing to have a growth mindset and move forward. Another task was just messaging the vision. And I talked about that a little bit earlier. My vision of equity and inclusion is that it has to be at the core of everything that we do. It can't be in one department or one school. Everything we do has to be filtered through equity and inclusion. Otherwise, we run the risk of the urgency being high over here, low over here. And we need to make sure that our urgency around this work is comprehensive and consistent throughout. Providing professional development to our staff. You're not going to do this work unless you have a strategic plan around professional development. The vision to prosper has to be backed up by training, again, for all staff. This is not just about the classroom teacher or the paraeducator or the principal. This is about all of the staff that support those buildings. I have a pretty simple expectation around support for complex work. So if the work is complex, let's not make the red tape, be complex. So my simple vision is that at the district level, all of us that work at the district level, our departments should be focused on supporting the building leadership. The building leadership needs to be focused on supporting the educational staff within that building. And the educational staff have to be focused on supporting our students. And if we provide that concept and that arrow goes that direction, then we know the work we're doing goes right to the buildings. And that work that we're doing as a district is predicated solely on our mission and vision, which is built by our board of directors. And so we stay strategically aligned in that fashion. Anytime we stop that flow of support, you can bet there's going to be a negative impact on our students. And I'm not willing to let that happen. So that's allowing space and grace. That's having difficult conversations, accountability, not in a way that beats people up, but in a way that says we've got to get back on that flow of support because our kids' lives depend on it. And I say this all the time. It's not the livelihood of our kids that depend on it. It is their very mortality that depends on that flow of support. So in my system, the equity and inclusion manager reports directly to me. There's no gap from my vision to that person's implementation of that vision. And that was very important to me. There's only, 1 degree of separation. So I'm confident that my vision is being implemented. And it does have to start with me. It doesn't end with my vision, because that vision gets changed and morphed in an organic way by conversations like this one, conversations with the board, or conversations with my council, or conversations with kids, right? Because that was huge, and empowering our student voice is huge. Conversations with staff. So this other reason for this org chart for the superintendent empowering is that it empowers that equity inclusion manager to carry out that vision. It offers, quite frankly, some sense of positional authority, because that person is speaking for the superintendent. And the reason I say that is because people don't generally change their mind because they think it's a good idea. They usually change their heart and their philosophical thinking because they do it first, they experience success second, and then it impacts their willingness to change how they really think about something. So some level of positional authority, I'm going to say, is okay as for that equity and inclusion manager to have. Things that I need from my equity and inclusion manager, man, I need my vision to be carried forward with fidelity in an organic way, because I also need that person to challenge my thinking. They've got to be comfortable to say, hey, Superintendent Banner, or better yet, hey, Ron, I don't know that that's going to work, or I don't know that that's the best course of action. That person has to have an expertise to effectively carry out the work with staff at all levels. That person's going to work with paraeducators, nutrition workers, council members, board directors, right? So that person has to have the expertise and the skill set to be able to manage and balance multiple personalities, multiple belief systems, or let's go back to people that are on different places in their personal journey. Grant, from your perspective, weigh in on this in terms of what the equity inclusion manager position maybe needs from me as the superintendent.
Yeah, no, I think really well said. The relationship, the chemistry has to be there, where yes, the equity rep is carrying out the vision of the superintendent, and then there's this reciprocal relationship where that equity rep gets to sharpen the superintendent.
Yeah.
And so beautifully said, and that's how we've been operating now for over a year, where we get to build each other as we're building, right, this district. And the interesting component of the person in this role around equity and inclusion is his or her hands. They're in almost everything: curriculum, HR, in terms of hiring, recruiting, retention. Like, you name the department, like, my hands tend to be in everything. And so to relegate it to a specific department, I think would water down the effectiveness and the ability to be comprehensive in moving the entire district along this journey towards being more equitable and inclusive. And so I call us biased to our approach. I think it has to be structured this way, in that it is reporting directly to the CEO of the organization, and then therefore permeates the entire organization in terms of culture and progress.
Yeah, I appreciate it, what you're saying. really when you talk about relationship, right, it comes down to community, and we've talked about that, like us just speaking in our this three, right, us three and the community that we've built. It goes beyond this talk. It goes to our everyday work, right, and being able to, you talked about sharpen each other. That's that old iron sharpens iron, and we need that again, and we need that growth mindset to be able to continue to move. Well, first, to recognize that you haven't arrived. Sometimes I feel like, I think we did something really good. And the reality is maybe we did do something really good, but we haven't arrived. And that's where that iron sharpens iron comes in. From a board perspective, what I need from our board and what I feel like I'm getting is an open and growth mindset. The sense of urgency around the work, that's very important, that the board shares that sense of urgency, and that the board is willing to engage in their own personal journey and their own professional journey around what they bring to the table. Communicating the vision and importance out to the community is what we also need from the board. And we haven't arrived, but we continue on the journey. Like, I can find solace in the fact that any portion of our organization hasn't gotten there, because what that tells me is, in recognizing that, we're constantly on the journey. So Marty, from the board perspective, what do you feel like the board brings and what you might need from the superintendent around this work?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I have to back up a little bit to catch up. And so I can remember when you and I discussed about having a higher level of focus on equity. So Doug Kernett, while he was our interim superintendent, we began some specific work on equity. And of course, Ron, you were deputy superintendent at the time, and I know your imprint was on that as well. And so we were leaning in to moving in this direction. And then when you became our superintendent, of course, part of the reason you became our superintendent is because we knew your heart was really given to seeing students be set up for genuine success. And that equity was at the forefront of that. It was interwoven in it. So there was no separation. So we knew that going in, that student success and equity were coming together. And we wanted that, but I'm just admitting we probably didn't really know what it meant. Because I can remember when you said you were going to align the EDI, I was the EDI specialist at that time, first year, and that person would report directly to you as a organizational person. And I'd love to hear your perspective. But if you remember, I started kind of shaking my head, and I think I probably gave you a little bit of pushback. And I thought, what's going to happen is that those other individuals on your council now are going to feel defensive. And so, I felt obligated to, hey, Ron, do you really know what you're doing in this? Just a little warning signal, I don't want to cross the line. And that's when you had the conversation with me about the difference of moving things forward and stalling. And the conversation that you shared so well during this presentation, which was your vision had to move forward. And for that to happen, it couldn't go forward through secondary and third voices. That needed to come through systemically through that position. So that made sense to us. And so what I wanted to be able to share with other boards is that if you're going to really take equity serious, and if you're not, why are you not? Why would you not? We're all real people. We really are better together. Do we really want to live in a bunch of segmented, fragmented, gated communities? Or do we want to come to the pool and have an amazing opportunity to hang with each other? So first of all, why would you not? And secondly, if you're going to do it, let's do it well. Let's do it to win. And so you've got to, just as you said, set the structure up for it to work. But I'm just thinking, Ron, I've known all along that it wasn't only the structure that you made correctly, but your heart's been so correct. And so I need to know that as a board, that your heart is strong in this and it's not going away. So that helps us, right? It helps us to feed your heart as we come alongside and make sure that we do our part. And then I'd also acknowledge that what our part is that we had to, as a board, and we're still learning. It's so true that we're on this journey of learning and leaning in together. But we had to learn that what has been said earlier by both you and Grant, that the real constituents of the school district are students. The board had to learn that too. See, we sometimes as a board, we think our constituents are the adults who elected us and voted for us. The truth of the matter is that's not. Our constituents are also these children in the next generation. It's just that they don't get to vote right now. And so what we do has to have the student and that child's best interest in mind, not how do we get reelected or how do we appease our voters. It's got to be how do we build a community for these students to truly be successful in. And so I think that that's one of the areas that you needed from us. You needed us to be on the same page of having the students' best interest in mind. And that created a cultural shift, not only in our school district, but you needed us as a board to be able to start moving out in the community as a community liaison for these children, students, so that they be set up for success outside of the classroom as well. I think that's been the exciting part for me, is to be able to trust that your heart, your structure in the district, it's going to work. Our board believes in it. We get to grow with you in that. And now we get to take it to the streets. You're taking it to the classroom. I hate to use the old Doobie Brothers song, but hey, baby, we're taking it to the streets. And that's our responsibility. We take it to the community. And it's been good for us to learn how to share in that, to where we don't go, oh, superintendent and school district, you're not doing your part in the community. Our levies aren't passing, our bonds aren't passing. You know, the community's not happy. If the community's not happy, then we as a board have learned, we roll up our sleeves and we take that on, because we need you doing your work in the district.
Yes, thank you. You know, I think that's a message well said. I think a next step, as I think about strategic alignment, is just a challenge to the attendees today. So challenging all of you. Hey, board director, how important is this to you?
Yeah.
Hey, superintendent, how important is this to you? Challenges, and I think outside of the comfort zone, take a stand, work together comprehensively to do this strategically across your district in a comprehensive way, because every single position has an impact on equity and inclusion. Every single position. And as leaders, we have to take that chance. We're going to make people upset. I can guarantee you're going to make people upset. And they're going to voice it. Most likely it's going to be anonymous on Facebook, but they're going to voice it. And so something I saw earlier, I always put quotes around things if I didn't say it, because I don't want to plagiarize, but I can't remember who said it. But it was, hey, superintendents, the superintendent's creed or whatever. It was, grant me the serenity to not read the comments. Grant me the strength to not read the comments. Grant me the wisdom to not read the comments, because those comments are going to come. I mean, you're going to get the compliments, but you can't let yourself be detoured by some of the anger that's going to be out there. So, you know, I guess I transition with the challenge. How important is it to you, and what will you do to take a stand?
Yeah. For boards, it's so important that we have to do our part. So the thing that I just heard from my own superintendent is that those comments are draining to him. They're not going to deflect him from doing his job, but they're a drain to the energy and the life of what he's really given his heart to. And so it's our responsibility, board. We are empowered. We can go out and start building healthy community around equity, so that the comments that are coming back are growth mindset versus distractions. And so that's what we want to do for you, superintendent. And I also want to make sure that you don't read too many of those comments, because you need to be improving classroom instruction anyway. So get off that fence, bud. It's our job to change the community. You just keep changing that student in that district. And so one of the things that boards need to make sure that we're mindful of is that we understand the impact that we can have in the community. And the impact that we can have in the community actually is as a champion for equity. And so sometimes we're almost like nervous to move out in equity because it might be unsettling. Let me just say, if you don't have strong community, it's already unsettled. And the stronger your community is, the better you're going to be able to face whatever barriers come. Hey, we all know COVID is not fun. We all know that having smoke and fires and ashes and have to stay inside is awful. The barriers are coming. The stronger the community, the better the way that we are able to navigate through whatever change and things are going to happen. So you've got to believe in community, and you've got to be a champion for equity, because if there's not true equity, if we're not valuing each person in our community, then we really are not in the right place of understanding equity. And I can just share where this happened to me, even on our community engagement leadership team. What we did is we brought 12 very influential people in our community, and we brought them together with the purpose of how can we build a healthier environment and city and community for children, so that our children are as healthy as possible, so that we would quit putting this burden on just the schools, right? And so as we were having these amazing type A 12 people coming together, they started brainstorming, and we actually thought we were coming up with great ideas until this amazing woman, I just want to give her a shout out, T.C. Cortancy Wigfall. She was our African American representative woman on the community engagement leadership team. She's also was in the military. And so she has a wealth of experiences in life and so insightful, but she didn't always share a lot of things, but she's the kind of person that when she does share, everybody's, leaning forward and listening. But she literally raised her hand, and I was kind of leading the meeting at that time. And so I said, yeah, TC, what is it? And then as would happen, everybody got really quiet. And Ron, you were in the meeting, so you can attest to this. And she said, well, it sounds to me like we're trying to fix community before we even build community right here with the 12 of us. And when she said that, you want to know about goosebumps? I'm getting them on the back of my neck right now. That was such an epiphany, aha moment, whatever you want to call it. That changed everything for me. And so at that point, we slowed down to make sure that we really understood one another, that we cared about each other. And when that happened, then we knew how to move things forward in terms of initiatives and actions, because we had really developed this thing that I would call collective connectedness. Now it wasn't we're all kind of brainstorming, coming up with collective decisions. We were connected, therefore the decisions that we were thinking about were holistic. They were bigger and better than what they would have been on our own. And they had at the heart of it true community and equity. And so we learned from that moment on that when you really value one another, you're going to have equity, because that's part of the dynamic. And when you truly experience that equity in community, then everything the way that it moves forward will be, Ron, as you said earlier, it will be organic, it will be dynamic, and it will be able to come up to situations with a collective connectedness that enables us to not only remove the barrier, but to overcome and be different people because we're together. So that's the amazing part of what we build.
Yeah, and one of the things that Ron, I'd love for you to share about is, thinking of the diversity that CELT has and is facilitating this community and this collective connectedness and this collaborative energy, recognizing differences, right? Not diminishing or ignoring differences, but highlighting, celebrating, embracing differences. Yes. There's going to be a need for change. And so when I think about change and transition and progress, I can't help but think about our journey analogy that's real for us, and then this idea of a marathon, a sprint. So I'd love to hear what you're thinking. How you think about that?
Yeah, thank you. When we talk about equity and inclusion, it has to be at the core of everything we do, and that's the primary message. So nobody's left out. Our equity and inclusion journey is approached with a big picture in mind. Yet Yet that big picture also allows for each person to enter wherever they are. And I've said this a few different times. This is a personal and professional journey, and we cannot divorce the two, because we have to examine what we bring to the classroom and how it impacts our students. And again, thinking about that progression of support, somebody at the district office is still bringing something to the classroom based on the work that they do within our district. So while we provide space and grace to enter the journey, we also provide a clear expectation for all staff that you, one, enter, and that you, two, work to make progress. Even if that progress is short and incremental, or short bursts or marathons of sprints, you still have to enter and you have to work to make progress. And we allow that to be organic. It's our sense of urgency that demands this from all staff members, and that same sense of urgency that allows for the space and the grace. It provides for the mirror and reflection concept, but it doesn't allow for anchors. It doesn't allow for people or situations to hold us back. And engaging in the process around equity and inclusion is as much and sometimes more important than the product that comes out of that. And the reason I say that is because, we can go through a process where we are elevating student voice, and we've done that, and we continue to do that. Students didn't get everything they wanted out of that process. I always started that meeting by saying, students, I'm not here to give you an ice cream machine in every classroom. And they kind of chuckle and they laugh, right? I say, I'm not here campaigning for class president, where I'm going to promise you a bunch of things. What I'm promising you is that you will be heard. And a lot of what those students told us manifested themselves into leadership action at the council level. Not everything turned into a product, but the respect that we garnered from students, because they now respected that we would listen to them. That process was more important than what came out of the product, because we were now empowering young people to have a voice and to know how to advocate for themselves. So engaging in that process is, I gotta say, it's probably the more rewarding. And when you do it naturally and organically and in a genuine way, there will be products that come out of it. And in doing so, I talked about respect, but like Marty said earlier, we established connectedness, collective connectedness, and we started to become more of a community.
The pace of change is a very conversation of diversity and perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And so here's what we'd say. If you're going to talk about a thing changing, right, or you're going to talk about the pace of something changing or being implemented, that table of that discussion needs to be really diverse. It needs to have people at that table that have varying perspectives. They come from different places and they look different, right? Because if that's a homogeneous conversation and you're talking about issues that are impacting, let's say, people of color, right? And your table is full of white people. That's not a bad thing that you have a table full of white people. It is bad if you're talking about the pace of something changing. And the thing that needs to change is impacting people of color, right? Because the folks that are currently at the table deciding, they're not feeling the weight of it not changing. And so you need people at the table who are feeling the weight of whatever's happening, saying and offering that perspective, like, no, this is heavy. Like, I need this off of me now. Yeah. So to have that conversation in a way that's honest and equitable and inclusive, we need diverse constituents, stakeholders, and people in our who are helping make decisions. We need that table really diverse, or else the pace of change becomes really homogeneous, and in some cases, it may stall.
And Grant, this has been an area that has been difficult for me to watch, because what you just said is exactly true and accurate. I know that it has worked that way. And so as a white male now, and one of the things, for those of you who are watching the presentation, we see each other in this room, Ron, Grant, and I. We know that Ron and Grant are African American males, that I'm a white male. We know that I'm older and that Ron's a little bit more middle and Grant's a little bit younger. We see each other on purpose. We go out of our way to see each other because there's different avenues that are needed during this championing of equity. And so one of the things that I've learned, and I really want your guys' feedback on it, and I'm almost going to apologize in some sense, but because I'm still learning myself, right? Learning what my part can be in this. So if it's a marathon of sprints, and it is, and if whatever we did yesterday only got us to yesterday, so that what we do today to move us to the next level for tomorrow is going to take ongoing strategies, work, and heart. If all that's true, and it is, and if we're not going to get there without each other and diversity, and we won't, then what we get to do is understand what is some of our parts. So as a white male, what's been interesting to me is that I see that my job in the sprint is almost in two categories. One is that I need to sprint by not diminishing or minimizing the experiences nor the voice of people of color. So I almost, when I hear Grant talk about the fact that he had this amazing, really traumatic, life-changing experience as a fifth grader, I almost hear myself going back to, when I was a fifth grader, I had these things that I went through. Instead of really leaning into the reality of what did Grant just say, a truck tried to run them over, intimidate, scare, put them in their place. When they needed support, law enforcement turned on them. When I really lean into that and hear that, it's not my story right now. It's that story that I need to lean into. And so we as white people, as white males, we need to become great listeners and leaning into what's really happened instead of minimizing it. And also, we also need to ask questions so that the voice, and when you hear the story, the voice needs to be amplified, not diminished or minimized. And so we need to ask questions. And that's part of sprinting, is asking more questions. Grant, what was that like? How did it impact you? What would have happened if those law enforcement persons would have come to you and put their arm around you and said, we need to move like that. How can we build that now? So that needs to be a part of my sprinting. And the second, I need to quit intentionally being unintentional and sitting back and watching the people of color do all the work, and then I grade them as if I'm watching Russell Wilson play football on television, and the next day I'm telling him what he could have done better. We don't get to do that. I mean, we do get to do that, unfortunately. But I feel like as a white male person, one of the things I get to do is to champion and say, this is wrong. This needs to be addressed, and it shouldn't be addressed in a white silo or a majority-only voice. It needs to be addressed by building legitimate community and having equity and a diverse perspective coming around this so that we as a community can move to a higher level of living. That's what I get to do. And so in a sense, I'm sorry when we sit back there and expect you to do the work, initiate it, and then we judge you for how well you did or didn't do it, or what your motives were behind it. And I want to move away from that. I genuinely do. And so to me, now I'm speaking to those of you who are white Americans, can you reshift a little bit and think differently in terms of that? And how are you sprinting? How are you coming alongside? And then what are you bringing to this table versus demanding or judging?
Marty, again, vulnerability, and just thank you for sharing that. This brings a quote that I do know who it is, and I want to make sure I get it right, so I literally just brought it up on my phone. credit to Grant. He shared this, and it stuck with me. And then I asked him to send it to me because I kept forgetting who sent it. But Brene Brown says that in order to empathize with someone's experience, you must be willing to believe them as they see it and not how you imagine their experience to be. And as you were talking, that's what resonated with me. So thank you for sharing that.
And so for us as a board, one of the things that we've learned is that, and Grant alluded to it earlier, that the goal is to make incremental progress. It's not an option to not make progress. It's not an option to move forward. And I know that if we as a board, we're not of one heart in this, and we're not all the same in the way we see it, but we're all coming together and wanting to do what we can to see our community grow in equity. And of course, we see that as vital to the students, and that's why we feel great in coming alongside Ron as our superintendent, and that's why we also want to do our best to make sure that resources and heart are there for the work of equity within the school. But I want you to know that what we've also recognized is that our board consisted of people of all one race. And so we were 5 white people. And so at some point, when you live in a school district, and boards, I just want to challenge you to look at your school district and to look at your communities and find out what the demographics are. And does your board represent the demographics of your community? And this is important for 2 reasons. One reason is because it gives fair voice, right? So that you can truly have community equity. But the other is, are these children in our communities, are they looking to people in leadership positions and seeing themselves there one day, right? And so we've got to be committed to making sure that we move forward with putting leadership in place that looks like our community. It's so imperative.
My hope that you find a personal connection to what we've talked about today, regardless of where your journey is. It's not about being in front or behind. It's about being on the journey. And if I could leave you with I'd like to leave you with everything that we talked about. Like if I could leave you with a smaller point to make sure that focus on, it's the sense of urgency. And it's having a sense of urgency and providing space and grace, but no stall. And that's leadership, right? That's where leadership comes in. And I wish I could say I'm the best at this. I'm not. There are people that are way better than me. I just want to share our journey. And the reason I say urgency is because our kids, your kids' very lives, and I go back to this, not their well-being, but their mortality depends on our leadership. Thank you guys for being with us today.
And so if I can leave or close with a couple of just kind of comments and thoughts that I think through summarizing our time today, I'd say for all of us, remember the journey, recognize the journey in that there are incremental steps and there are stages to our process and our progress. And so celebrate the small victories, celebrate the small wins, recognize that sometimes the process is just as important as a particular product or outcome. And we'll come to the strategic plans, but embrace the process. Enjoy the journey. It's worth it. It's hard work, but it's the right work. And it's what we're called to do.
It's a wonderful thing to be a part of a community. Community is so significant. And in my own life, I get so much joy out of feeling connected with other individuals. And when there's others who are connected to move the right things forward, what we call collective connectedness, which is what is necessary for equity, you guys, it just feels good. And we're all going to stand for something. And I am excited to champion the role and the work of equity, because Ron is right. If this is urgent, if individuals' lives really depend on it, we don't need somebody who's tolerating equity we need somebody who's championing equity. And you guys, you've made me a better person to be able to even move in that direction. And I'm just acknowledging that I want to be a champion for equity. It means that much to me. And I'm encouraging the rest of you as board directors and people in community, let's go make our communities to where we have a sense of really seeing each other, valuing one another, and just enjoying one another.